For 2 hours, the biggest accounts on Twitter belonged to somebody else. Obama, Musk, Apple, Biden. Every one of them pointing at the same Bitcoin address. In San Francisco, someone at a crypto exchange watched that address fill and added it to a list. $278,000 never made it out. The list was ordinary. Every large exchange keeps one. It is the set of destinations the company will not send customer money to, and adding a line to it takes about as long as adding a contact to a phone. 1,100 of that exchange's own customers had already tried to send their savings to that address. Some of them had seen it recommended by an account they trusted completely. Their own exchange's account, on Twitter, which was posting the scam as well. So one half of that company was being used to advertise the theft, while the other half was quietly refusing to fund it. We know what the exchange did because its chief information security officer said so on the record 4 days later. Somebody was in that chair on a Wednesday afternoon and made a decision worth more than everything the attackers took. Nobody has ever said their name. So who was supposed to be sitting in that chair? The question belongs to the other company in this story, the one that had just lost control of its own platform. Because the report that eventually explained all of this, published by New York State's Department of Financial Services in October of that year, records something that is easy to read past. Twitter had not had a chief information security officer since December of the previous year. 7 months. In those 7 months, the company moved its entire workforce to remote work, and the same report found it did not put in place any significant compensating controls for the new risk. There is a second number in that report, and it is the one that matters most. Inside the company, there was a set of internal tools built for customer support. They could reset an account, they could change the email address attached to it, they could hand someone a login without a password. Over 1,000 Twitter employees still had access to those tools. That is 1,000 people spread across support, moderation, and operations at a company where the person whose job was to worry about exactly this had been gone since Christmas. Very few of them were engineers. The tools were not the vulnerability. The tools were the product working correctly. The question was only ever how many hands they were in and who was counting. Stage 1 was a telephone. The Department of Financial Services calls it vishing, which is social engineering conducted over the phone. Per that report, the callers rang Twitter employees and said they were from the help desk in Twitter's own IT department. Then they directed those employees to a website built to capture their credentials. That is the whole of Stage 1, and it is worth sitting with how unremarkable it is. There was no 0 day. There was no malware. There was a phone call that sounded like a colleague at a company where everyone had recently started working from their kitchens. Stage 2 was the console. The captured credentials reached the internal support tooling, and the tooling did exactly what it was designed to do for whoever was holding it. Stage 3 is the part that gets left out, and it is the part this channel exists for. Before any famous account posted anything, there was already a business. The business was selling usernames, short, old, desirable Twitter handles, the kind that were claimed in 2007 and have been worth money ever since. Those handles were traded on a forum called Ode Users, which existed to broker exactly that. It helps to understand what the product actually was: a single letter handle, a common first name, a word nobody could otherwise register because somebody claimed it 15 years earlier and stopped logging in. There is a real market for those, and it has its own vocabulary. In that market, they are called OG accounts, which is where the forum got its name. They change hands for hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands, and the buyers are usually not criminals in any sense they would recognize. Mostly, these are collectors. What the internal console did was turn that market from a negotiation into a transaction. You no longer had to find the person who owned the handle. You could simply change the email address on the account and walk away with it. That is a much smaller crime than the one this video is named after, and it was running first. Per the federal complaint, one of the men charged advertised a price list, $250 to change the email address on an account, $2,000 to $3,000 for direct access. Hold that in your head because it is going to matter later. A price list means customers. Customers mean payments. Payments mean somebody has to be paid. Stage 4 was the 15th of July, 2020, between 8 in the evening and 10 in the evening, coordinated universal time, roughly 2 hours. In that window, per the Department of Financial Services, 130 accounts were compromised. 45 of them were used to send tweets. 36 had their direct messages accessed. 8 had their full account archive downloaded. The first of the high-profile messages went out at 17 minutes past 8. It offered to double any Bitcoin sent to a single address. Read the list of who posted it, because the list is the point. A former president of the United States. The man who would become the next president's opponent. The world's richest man. The founder of Microsoft. The founder of Amazon, Apple, Uber. And then, in the same window, a set of accounts that tells you something about the plan. Binance, Gemini, Coinbase, the website bitcoin.org, a crypto trade publication. They took over the exchanges as well. They used the most trusted accounts in cryptocurrency to vouch for the address they wanted the money sent to. Twitter's response tells you how bad it was. The company stopped every verified account on the platform from tweeting at all, worldwide, while it worked out what was happening. The fastest way to stop it was to switch off the ability of every verified user on Earth to speak. 36 accounts had their private messages read while this was going on. 8 had their entire archive downloaded. Every message, every draft, every location the account had ever attached to a post. That data is still gone. Nothing later in this story gets it back. And that is stage 5, which is the only stage that was ever going to be a problem. Every scheme in this room eventually arrives at the same question. Everyone remembers how a thing was taken. Almost nobody asks how it was going to be spent. In the vocabulary investigators use, this is placement. It is the moment illicit value has to touch something regulated, and it is where the controls live, because it is the only point in the chain where a stranger has to hand your money to you. These 3 had solved access completely. Their answer to placement was to publish one Bitcoin address to several hundred million people and wait. About $118,000 arrived, across more than 300 separate transactions. Think about what that number means for a moment. They had control of accounts, followed by hundreds of millions of people, for 2 hours, with nobody able to stop them. The take was about the price of a small flat. It is worth being precise about why. Bitcoin is not anonymous, and it never was. It is a public ledger. Every payment ever made sits in it permanently, visible to anyone, forever. What Bitcoin gives you is not secrecy, it is the ability to receive money without asking permission first. Those are completely different things, and mistaking one for the other is the single most expensive error in this entire field. Publishing the address is not the mistake. The address was always going to be public. That was the entire mechanism. The mistake is quieter, and it had already happened, months earlier, in a place none of them were thinking about. Go back to the price list. $250 to change an email address, $2,000 to $3,000 for access. Those were real transactions with real buyers, and they had to settle somewhere. Those payments settled at exchanges, regulated ones, the kind that are legally required to know who their customers are before they will move a single dollar. That requirement has a name, and if you take one piece of vocabulary from this video, take this one. It is called Know Your Customer, and in the trade it is shortened to 3 letters, KYC. It is a legal requirement, and there is no setting that turns it off. It is the rule that says a regulated financial institution must establish who you actually are before it holds value on your behalf. A government identity document, a date of birth, an address it can check. The reason it exists is precisely this, so that when somebody eventually needs to know who received the money, the answer is already written down, and it was written down long before anyone had a reason to ask. So to run the business, they had opened accounts in their own names. Per the criminal complaint, One of those accounts carried a driver's license. It carried a date of birth. It carried a home address. All of it uploaded voluntarily by the account holder so that the account would work. And the same email address that opened it had also been used to register the handle on the account trading forum. One string tying a nickname to a photograph of a government identity document. They had taken an account that could speak to 330 million people. They were identified by a picture of a driver's license they had uploaded themselves months earlier to get paid for something else. This is the part of the job that never changes. The intrusion is a technical problem, and technical problems have technical solutions. Getting paid is a human problem. The moment value has to become money, somebody regulated has to look at you and write down who you are. Every scheme this channel has ever taken apart has died at that exact step, not at the break-in, at the counter. If you are finding this useful, a like and a subscribe genuinely help this channel keep taking these apart. It is the only thing I will ask for. And there is one more thing about that exchange, the one from the cold open. The company that refused the money that afternoon was also the company holding the file that named them. The block and the identification came out of the same building. Start with what the block was actually worth, because it is the number nobody quotes. According to the exchange's chief information security officer, speaking on the 20th of July, the company prevented more than 1,100 of its customers from sending Bitcoin to that address. 30.4 Bitcoin, worth about $278,000 at the time. 14 customers got through before the block landed. Between them, they sent about $3,000. Set that against the roughly 118,000 that reached the scheme in total. One company, acting inside the 2-hour window, stopped more than twice what the entire operation ever collected. Then the chain itself. Investigators worked the Bitcoin ledger with commercial blockchain analysis tooling, and the useful thing about that ledger is that it is permanent and public. Here is what that work actually looks like, because it is less mysterious than it sounds. You start with one address you know is dirty. In this case, it was handed to you by the criminals, in public, at 17 minutes past 8. Then you look at everything that address ever touched. Money coming in, money going out. Which addresses move together, in what amounts, at what times. Addresses that behave like one owner get grouped into what is called a cluster. It is a working assumption rather than a proof, and it is built out of patterns of behavior rather than any single revealing transaction. Per the analysis published afterwards, they clustered the wallets by timing and by amounts, and in some cases by the notes the users had attached to their own payments. People had written down what they were buying. That deserves a second. Some of the payments into that wallet arrived with a message attached, describing the stolen account being paid for. A ledger that keeps everything forever, and somebody typed a receipt into it. The cluster resolved outward, transaction by transaction, until it reached accounts at exchanges that keep identity records. 2 accounts at one of the world's largest exchanges, an account at another, carrying a driver's license. And then the last thread, which was not technical at all. The email address on that identity-verified account was the same email address behind the seller's handle on the username forum, a nickname on a criminal marketplace, a photograph of a government identity document, joined by one string of text, reused because it was convenient. Meanwhile, the platform itself was running its own investigation. It worked through employee logs, email records, and phone records, establishing which internal accounts had been used and by whom. 2 completely separate institutions, neither of them law enforcement, each holding one half of the answer. An exchange with an identity file, and a platform with an access log. Neither of them was the target of an investigation. Both of them were simply keeping records, because that is what regulated companies are required to do. The federal complaint was filed on the 31st of July, 16 days. 16 days from taking control of the most visible communication platform on Earth, to 3 names in a public court document. 3 people were charged that day, and the attributions matter, so here they are as the record states them. A 19-year-old in the United Kingdom, Mason Shepherd, was charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, and unauthorized access to a computer. Per the complaint, he brokered the username sales. A 22-year-old in Orlando, Nima Fazili, was charged with aiding and abetting intentional access to a protected computer. And a 17-year-old in Tampa was charged as an adult by the state of Florida with 30 felony counts including organized fraud and identity theft. In March of the following year, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison, followed by 3 years of probation. He was a minor at the time, and this channel is not going to name him. A fourth man, Joseph O'Connor, a buyer in the username trade, was extradited from Spain and sentenced in June of 2023 to 5 years. There is a name in the complaint that is not an identification. The co-defendants describe dealing with someone they knew only as Kirk. The document records what they said about him. It is a handle in a transcript, and it should be read as one. Now the loose ends, and there are 3. The roughly $118,000 that did arrive was not cleanly recovered, and no source this script would trust says otherwise. The honest number in this story is the money that never moved, not the money that came back. Second, the 8 accounts whose complete archive was downloaded. Every private message, every location, every deleted draft. That data left, and it was never coming back. And third, the anchor. We still do not know who added that address. The company said what the company did. It has never said who did it, and there is no reason it should have. Somewhere there is a person who spent about 90 seconds on an ordinary afternoon and prevented more theft than the people who planned this for months ever managed. What did change is on the record. In October of 2020, New York's Department of Financial Services published the report this script has been quoting. It is the document that put the number on it. Over 1,000 people had access, and nobody senior had been counting for 7 months. It is worth being clear about why a state financial regulator wrote a report about a social media company at all. The answer is in the account list from Stage 4. The attackers took over cryptocurrency exchanges that the same regulator licenses. So the question in front of that regulator was not really about tweets. It was whether a platform with that much reach over financial markets had controls proportionate to the damage it could do. The report's answer was that it did not, and its most quoted finding is not a technical one at all. It is that a company of that size had left the chair empty. That is the durable outcome here, more than any of the sentences were. A published official document establishing what the access actually looked like on the inside, written by somebody with the standing to demand an answer. Here is what this one taught detection. The strongest control in this entire case was not at the company that got breached. It was 3,000 miles away, at a company nobody was attacking, and it was one line added to a list. Access is a technical problem. Getting paid is a human one, and humans have to show identification. If this is the kind of thing you want more of, hit like and subscribe. It is genuinely how this channel finds the next case. Case closed. Follow the money.